Hello, everybody. Hello, my name's Paul. I am the assistant planetarium producer at We the Curious. Welcome to spring stargazing from your window. I was just thinking I should get one of those ticking clocks that you used to get at the beginning of shows for schools, programs for schools in the 80s. I should get one of them and play some lovely acoustic music over it while you're waiting for this to start, for that retro feel. Maybe I'll see if I can sort that out. Maybe not. Well, welcome anyway. Lovely to see you all. And today we're going to be looking at something. Well, we're going to be looking at my favourite constellation. One of my favourite constellations, anyway. I know I say that about them all, but this is genuinely one of my favourites, this one is. And we'll also be looking at something you might have seen in the news this week as well. Now, as always, feel free to ask your space questions in the comments, and I will do my best to answer them either during the show or perhaps after the show. And also, Tom is here as well. Tom is online, and he will be answering your questions as well on behalf of We the Curious. So, hello, Tom. Thank you very much. In fact, let's see if anybody's here. Let's say hello to anyone who's here. Hello, Rachel. Hello, Lincoln. Hello, Charlotte and Amelie. Hello, Maria, Thomas, Josh and Miles. Hello, Barry and Rowan. Lovely to see you. Lovely to see you again. I recognise a few familiar names there. It's lovely to see you back. Well, oh, and hello, Tom, as well. Lovely. We are going to be using Stellarium, the free planetarium software that anybody can download to their computer for absolutely free. It really is marvellous. So if any of you don't have a good view out your window, or it's really cloudy, or it's really bright where you are, lots of street lamps around, don't worry too much, because you can use Stellarium to look at the things I'm showing you. So, speaking of Stellarium, let's have a look at it. Let me see if I can get it up. Here we go. Once again, beautiful daytime sky. And it's no good to us, is it? Because we want to look at the nighttime sky. So if I bring my cursor over to the left, over to the clock, and we're going to dial it up to a bit later than we have been, because it's getting brighter a bit later, I think. Getting darker a bit later, I mean. Here we go, 10 o'clock. That'll do. So you'll notice I haven't got my little compass points on today. I'm going to challenge myself to see if I can find what we're looking for without the compass points, because of course you don't have the compass points in real life. And that reminds me, actually, what we're going to do to find this constellation is recap something from our first program. Now, I don't know if you tuned in for our first broadcast, but we looked for the saucepan and the North Star, because they are great starting points, great way to get your bearings in the nighttime sky. So that's what I'm going to try and do now, is pretend I'm looking at a normal sky and I'm going to try and find the saucepan. So let's have a look. We'll look up. We'll spin around a bit. It should stand out to us. I wonder if any of you can spot it. I think I've spotted it. Here we go. Now, don't worry if you can't see it. This will be easier to see if this were the real sky, especially if you've got some street lamps around you blocking out those dimmer stars. It's these 7 stars here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's our saucepan. And if you remember, we used the saucepan to find the North Star. If I move us up a little bit now, that's what I'm going to try and do. I wonder if I can get this right. So imagine this is an upside down saucepan, and this is the lip of the pan. And the distance between these 2 stars, we're going to try and jump that 5 times, roughly, through space. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And there's our little North Star. Look at that. Oh, I got the right one. Lovely. Polaris, the North Star. Now, we know which way we're looking. So I am going to turn on, by pressing Q, the compass points. There we go. And look at that. The North Star is directly above the north, as it should be always. But we don't want to look towards the north. We want to spin around and look in the opposite direction. So, apologies if I'm making you feel dizzy. There we go. We'll turn the saucepan the right way up. And I want you to imagine this saucepan is on a hob or a stove. And it's boiling away, it's bubbling away. There are beans in the saucepan. Imagine, though, you got distracted by a phone call or possibly by watching a rather interesting live stream on Facebook, and you've ignored the pan for too long, and you burnt a hole right in the middle of the bottom of the pan, right about here. Now imagine all that bean juice running down the stove, running through the sky. Follow that bean juice straight down until you come across the first really bright fat star you can see. This one here. This bright fat star there is called Regulus. And Regulus is a star in our constellation. Now I'm going to try and trace out this constellation for you. First though, I'm going to show you an asterism. Now you remember, if you watched our first episode, that an asterism isn't one of the 88 official constellations named by the International Astronomical Union. An asterism is just a handy unofficial shape in the sky. That's what the saucepan is. The saucepan is an asterism, and that's what this shape I'm about to show you is. Look at that. It's like a sickle. That's what it's called, this asterism. The sickle, an old-fashioned farming tool. Now I think it looks like the top of a coat hanger, or maybe a pirate's hook, or perhaps a backwards question mark. That's our asterism. But much like the saucepan is part of a much larger shape, that of Ursa Major, the Great Bear, the sickle is also part of, well, let me show you. This is the head. The hook is, the sickle is actually the head. We've got a body here. And we got a little tail. Look at that. And hopefully, if I click on Regulus again and I press C, there we go. I've outlined it for you. And I'm going to show you its name by pressing V. It is, of course, Leo the Lion. There we go. And that is how you find Leo the Lion. Leo is a very bright constellation. It's a good one to find around this time of year, around the spring. And all you got to do is look beneath the saucepan to find it for that distinctive sickle shape. Now, Leo has lots of interesting stories behind it, just like all the best constellations do. And, well, the most famous story attached to Leo is the story of, well, the Nemean lion. Now, according to the ancient Greeks, Leo was an indestructible super lion from the moon. And, yep, that's absolutely true. And Leo came down from the moon and he moved into a cave next to a village called Nemea. And every so often he'd come down to the village and he'd gobble up one of the villagers, which of course they weren't too happy about. And so they asked a hero to defeat the lion for them. They asked Heracles. Now that name might sound familiar to you, Heracles. That is the Greek name for this hero. You might be more familiar with his Roman name, Hercules. But I'll just call him Heracles for this story. Heracles went to the cave and he knew that he couldn't use swords, spears, arrows. None of that would work because this was an indestructible super lion we were talking about, and they just bounce off his indestructible fur. And so Hercules used his bare hands. He grappled with the beast and he managed to defeat the beast, and he took off the beast's fur. That's right, quite gruesome that. And he made an indestructible super cape for himself. And as for Leo the lion, his battle with Heracles was remembered forever because Leo was placed in the sky where he would be remembered forever. Now, I don't want you to think, that is a good story, I love that story, but I don't want you to think that that's where it started. The ancient Greeks were the first to spot this shape, and nobody else saw this shape before them. Because there are stories about this pattern in the stars, very similar stories to that of Leo the Lion, dating back thousands of years before the ancient Greeks were around. And there's evidence that Leo dates back to, well, further than the ancient Greeks, to the Mesopotamians, the ancient Mesopotamians. And they may have had a very similar constellation as early as 4000 BCE. Now we're talking 6,000 years ago there, very, very long time ago. Now some historians think that Leo may have represented Humbaba. And Humbaba was a giant, a monster, who fought a hero called Gilgamesh. And the story of Gilgamesh was found on stone tablets, and they're in museums. They're a bit cracked and smashed, and we don't have all of them, but they're in museums even to this day. And the Epic of Gilgamesh tells this story of this great hero. And it's thought to be one of the earliest surviving works of great literature in the world. So this is a really old story, this is. And I'm going to show you a picture of Humbaba. If you just bear with me for a sec. Let's see if I can get him up. Here he is. Haha, there's Humbaba the Terrible, he was known as. And this is a clay plaquette of Humbaba's head that you can find this in the Louvre in Paris today. And it's from about sometime 2000 years BCE. BCE, that means before Common Era, that is. So it's a very long time ago, very old thing. Anyway, Humbaba the Terrible. Let me tell you this story. It's quite similar to the story of Heracles and Leo. Gilgamesh was a hero, and he had been given the task of defeating a monster called Humbaba. And Humbaba was the guardian of the cedar forest, the home of the gods. I don't know if you can hear my doorbell there. I think I'm getting some post. Just ignore that. And it's not Humbaba at my door, I promise you. Anyway, Humbaba was the guardian of the cedar forest. That's the home of the gods. And apparently Humbaba had a lion's face, and his roar was a flood. And he breathed fire, and he even had super hearing. He could hear you coming at him in the forest from miles away. So he was a really powerful dude, basically. But Gilgamesh succeeded in defeating him. And he was going to show him mercy, but his friend convinced him not to show him mercy and to chop his head off instead. So that's what he did. He chopped off Humbaba's head. Well, the god Enlil, he was not too happy about this. So what he did, he divided Humbaba's auras. I guess that's like the essence of his being. Enlil divided these auras of Humbaba between the fields, the rivers, the reeds by the rivers, the palace, the forests, the goddess of the underworld, and the lions. Got a bit of Humbaba's essence too, the lions. So you can see it's quite a similar story to the story of Leo the Lion. Anyway, let's go back to Stellarium now, because I want to talk about something a bit different. I want to talk about something you might have seen in the news recently. Now, you might have seen it being reported that there is a meteor shower happening this week. And that is true. The meteor shower is called the Eta Aquarids. And you might have seen the news reporting that you'll be able to see up to 40 meteors in an hour. And according to the news, it's a meteor shower that happens every year. And it peaks yesterday, or rather this morning, between the 5th and the 6th of May, between midnight and dawn. And but the nice thing about this meteor shower is that it's got a sort of plateau of good rate. So it's not like one sharp peak one night when it's best to see it. It lasts all week. And that's all true. That is all true. But I feel these reports have sort of exaggerated a bit about how easy these meteors, these shooting stars, are going to be to see. And let me show you what I mean. First, let me tell you why they're called the Eta Aquarids. It's because they seem to be coming from a star in the constellation of Aquarius. And this star is called Eta Aquarii. And let me show you how to find that constellation. We'll go back down to the ground. And let's see if I can do this. I'm going to try and swivel around. I want to be looking going round the houses here, but I want to be looking towards the southeast. Now, the time we're currently set to is 10:15, and that's no good for our purposes. If we're going to see some meteors, we need to go later. So this is tomorrow morning, or this will be tomorrow morning at 4:15. There we go. So 4:15, and let's see if I can really impress you now by finding this constellation, because it's not a very easy constellation to find. In fact, I'm going to impress you by finding the exact star, the Eta Aquarii star. I think it's that one. Oh, look at that. Oh, yes. Eta Aquarii and the constellation of Aquarius. And this perhaps gives you some idea of what I mean when I say that this meteor shower isn't quite going to be as spectacular as some of the news reports have been making it out to be. I'm just going to press Control Shift M. This little green thing there, that's the meteor shower. And it should be coming from this direction, the meteor shower. And it's true to say that even though this is really low down and really late or really early in the morning, that shouldn't affect it too much, because the meteors don't necessarily appear next to their point of origin. You might be able to see quite a few over the eastern sky. But having said that, it is low down. The sun's starting to come up. And to be honest, this meteor shower is more spectacular if you're on the other side of the world, in the southern hemisphere. Oh, did you see one then? Ha! There we go. There was one. I don't know if you spotted that then, but there was one just about here. That's quite exciting, isn't it? So, just as I was saying, oh, you probably won't see any. One of them appears. Oh well, it doesn't matter. But they're not going to be. You might see a few. You might see a few, but they're not. It's not going to be as spectacular as the news reports have been making out. You need to be in Australia, in the southern hemisphere, on the other side of the world, to truly get the full impact of this meteor shower. But having said that, if you are an early riser, if you fancy getting up at 4 o'clock, looking out your window towards the eastern sky some point this week. Oh, there was another one. Huh? There we go. You might be lucky and you might see one or two. Now, we've covered meteor showers before on here. We talked about the Lyrids. But I didn't really go into detail about the origins of these meteor showers, where they come from. I did say that they happen when the Earth passes through a cloud of dust and debris in space. But I didn't say where this cloud of dust and debris comes from. Well, this cloud of dust and debris is a trail left by a comet. And the different meteor showers you get throughout the year are trails left by different comets. Now, this comet in particular is Halley's Comet. Halley's Comet left a little trail behind itself. There's no one in space to clear up this trail of dust and debris. So every year at the same time, this time of year, planet Earth passes through this trail of dust and debris and rock and grit, and it burns up as it falls through our atmosphere every year at the same time. And that's why we get these different meteor showers. Now, there's a much better meteor shower coming up in August. That's one of my favourite meteor showers, and that is the Perseids. That's one of the brightest and most active meteor showers. So if you don't fancy getting up in the morning, don't worry too much, because wait till August the 12th, I would, and then you'll have a really good view of some shooting stars, some meteors at that point. Anyway, I was talking about Halley's Comet. Now, Halley's Comet takes 76 years to orbit a sun, and a comet is like a ball of rock and ice from the outer edges of the solar system that's been pulled by the sun's gravity towards the sun, and it's orbiting the sun, going around and round and round. It takes a very long time to do this. And Halley's Comet takes 76 years to orbit the sun. It was last visible from Earth, because you can see these comets from Earth sometimes. It was last visible from Earth in 1986. And I was 5 years old at that point, so I was far too young to be looking for comets. And it'll be visible again in 2061. I say I was far too young to be looking for comets. There's no real age, is there? You can look for comets no matter how old you are. But This particular comet will be visible from Earth in 2061. So set your watches for that. Now, I want to talk about a different comet now. I want to talk about a comet with a bit of a harder name to say. This comet, let's see if I can say this. I'm going to read this out. This comet is called Comet 67P Churyumov-Gerasimenko. I'm just going to call it Comet 67P if that's okay. Now, Comet 67P, the nucleus of this comet, I'm talking about the actual ball of ice and rock, not the gas around it, just the ball of ice and rock. This nucleus is about 4.3 kilometers across. Now, that's not very big compared to other stuff you might see in space. It's about the distance from We the Curious to St. George's Park, if you live in Bristol. That's how big it is. It's not very big at all. In 2014, the European Space Agency sent a robotic mission to Comet 67P called the Rosetta probe. And Rosetta was designed to orbit this comet and send back information and data to Earth. And this is a really interesting thing to do because comets were formed in the very early days of the solar system and they've remained unchanged since then. So they're kind of like little time capsules from like billions of years in the past. So it's a very exciting thing to investigate a comet. And Rosetta went around this comet for a few years. In 2014 it got there. And it even sent a little lander called Philae to the comet. This little lander actually had to harpoon the comet to land on it because it's very small. It doesn't have a lot of gravity, so you couldn't just land on it normally. It had to harpoon itself to the surface of the comet. And it bounced around a bit, this lander did. It was about the size of an armchair before it finally settled. And it sent back lots of information. Eventually, Rosetta itself was crashed into the comet in about 2016. And it took some pictures as it was crashing towards the comet. And I'd like to show you one of those pictures now. So let me just... Here we go. Look at that. That is a photo taken by Rosetta as it was on his way to crash from about 26.2 kilometers above the surface of Comet 67P. So you're actually looking at a photograph of the surface of a comet there. And this is one of those photos that gives me goosebumps when I look at it. It's amazing, isn't it? You could imagine that was like a movie set for Star Wars or something, or a photo from somewhere on Earth perhaps the Rocky Mountains in Canada or the Alps. But we're actually looking at the surface of a comet there. So I think that's pretty amazing, that is. Well, I'm going to finish my waffle thereabouts, but what I'd like to do now is go to Facebook and see if we've got any questions. So let's have a look. Oh, lots of people saying hello, hello. Hello, Ellis and Evan. Hello, Charlie. Hello, Tisha from Brisbane. Oh, you might get a good view of the Eta Aquarids, Tisha, because you're in the southern hemisphere. Lovely stuff. Oh, and Tom has provided a link to Stellarium there. Thanks, Tom. Hello, Lisa from India. Fantastic stuff. Is the white snow on the comet? That's a really good question. I think what we're looking at there is lots of ice and rock is what we're looking at there. So the white, but I think it's not necessarily a colour photo. Let's have another look back at it. Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily a colour photo, but all that white stuff would be ice, yeah. Oh, unless you mean this white stuff here, there on the edges. I'm not quite sure. That might actually be sunlight reflected off it. I'm not 100% sure what that is. I think that's more likely to be sunlight reflected off it. Really good question, that. I'll look into that in a bit more detail. How many stars are in Leo? Ah, that's a really good question. Well, should we have a look? Let's have a look. We'll go back to Stellarium. And we'll see if we can count the stars in Leo. So if we turn back around... Oh. Never mind that. There we go. We turn back around where was Leo? He was kind of in the southwest, so I'll just get rid of them for now. And I'll take us back to, what was it, about 10 o'clock, wasn't it? There he is, there's Leo. So you've got Regulus there, but you've also got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 stars in Leo. Now I suspect that question might have been asked by my nephew, Jake. So excellent question, Jake. Well done. Let's go back to Facebook, see what else we have. And he has asked, how many moons does Jupiter have? Oh, off the top of my head, that's Ellis has asked that question. It's a really good question, Alice. I think it's about 79 moons, give or take. And that's something we looked at last week, actually, the moons of Jupiter. So if you're interested in Jupiter, that video should still be on Facebook. But yeah, it's got about 79 known moons. But there could be more, because up until last year, Jupiter had the most moons of any planet. But then we found 20 new moons going around Saturn that we didn't know about before. So now Saturn's got 82 moons going around it. So Saturn's got more moons than Jupiter now. But you never know, maybe we'll find some more moons going around Jupiter. The closer we look at it and the more detail we look at it, we're finding more things about space all the time. How many stars in the sky? Evie Age 8 has asked. Do you know what? I can't remember the exact number, but as you can see thousands of stars in the sky on a clear night. And I've heard someone say there are more stars in the sky than there are grains of sand on every beach on Earth, which is quite nice. I quite like to think about that. But that's not necessarily we can see every one of those stars with the naked eye, but we can see thousands of stars with the naked eye. So, I said hello to Lisa in India, but it's actually India Age 9 from Bristol watching on Facebook. But well, lovely to meet you, India. Nice to see you. Let's have a look. Brilliant stuff. Well, I think I'm going to wrap up there. But do have a little look, if you can, for Leo outside your window. And see if you can, if you fancy getting up early, see if you can find any of the Meteor Aquariids. Like I said, don't worry too much if you can't see any. There are other meteor showers coming up throughout the year. And next week, we will be looking at another planet. I think we're going to be looking at Mars next Wednesday. So I'm going to show you how to find Mars. I'm going to give you a bit of the background detail on Mars. And that will be at 11 o'clock on the Wednesday here on Facebook. So, well, I've really enjoyed talking to you all. And, well, I guess I'm going to see you next week. Thank you for joining me. See you later, everyone. Bye-bye.